But as you remember, or even if you don't remember, we yesterday got up to very close, very near the end of the Megillah. Now, okay, just a small word about the Megillah. There's a lot of unusual things we talked about the Megillah. It doesn't have the name of God in it. It symbolizes the Jewish people in exile. It's what's read on the only holiday in Judaism, Purim, that doesn't have a Jewish name. Purim is a Persian name, to the degree that in the Megillah itself, it says the holiday is called Purim al Shema Pur, and then it says a Pur is a goral. The word goral means like lots or something, and the word Pur doesn't mean anything in Hebrew. Doesn't mean anything in Hebrew, but in Persian or whatever it means lot. So it even says, it translates it in the Megillah itself, Pur hu goral, Pur is a goral. Okay, another thing is, this is the last book that was written in Judaism, in the what's called the written Torah. Written Torah. The last official book, which is written in what's called the Torah and the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, the Torah and the prophets and the writings, is the book of Chronicles called Divrei Yamim. And before that, there's the 5 books of Moses, and then afterwards the book of Joshua, and then afterwards all the what's called the Judges come in. The last of the Judges was Samson, and then after that is the book of Samuel. And Samuel is like sort of the first prophet. Samuel, of course, Moses was the first prophet, but Samuel is a prophet. And Samuel, he anoints King David. You know, it's King Saul first, but that was only temporary, and then King David. And then King David, he rules and consolidates Israel and etc. And he dies, and then begins the book of Kings. And that's with King Solomon. And King Solomon, he builds the temple. That's going to be the Haftorah, by the way, of this Shabbat. Is right in the beginning of King Solomon building the temple. So he builds the temple, and then that's the whole book of Kings, and it goes through this terrible story about how the kings sinned one after the other, and God eventually destroyed the first temple. And then the Jews go into exile, right? And that's written in the book of Kings. And then, of course, there's all the prophets, which are inserted in there. And Isaiah and the 12 smaller, they call the smaller prophets because they have smaller prophecies. And then there's the last official prophets is Haggai and Zechariah and Malachi, the prophets. And then there's what's called the writings, the book of Psalms, the book of Proverbs, the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Ruth, the Megillah of Ruth, Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, and then that's it. And then there's the book of, Chronicles. Then there's the book of Chronicles, and the book of Chronicles tells a short sort of a resume of the whole history of Judaism until the first temple is destroyed, and it ends. The book of Chronicle ends when King Koresh, he allows the Jews to go back to Israel to build a temple, and that's it. He allows them to go back. What happens afterwards? It doesn't say in the actual writings. Well, that's the Jews go back to Israel, they're building the temple, and that's when this whole story of Esther comes in. Because, like I said, the Samaritans opposed the building of the temple, make a lot of trouble for the Jews. And Achashverosh, they convince King Achashverosh, and it says that Haman's 10 sons were also a big part of this delegation to stop the building of the temple, and it stopped. The first temple, the second temple, the building of the second temple stopped. And after the miracle of Purim, it began again. But it doesn't talk about that in the Torah. It doesn't talk about that. So this book of Esther is really written after all the books. And we're going to see in the end of the Megillah that Esther is going to have a little bit of a hard time getting this book accepted as one of the books of the Torah, and also that the holiday of Purim should be accepted as one of the. Well, the main thing is the book. That's the main thing. Hanukkah came way after. Hanukkah, the holiday of Hanukkah comes like 200 years after, but there is no book of Hanukkah. They say there's a Magilat Hanukkah, but in any case, we don't read it in public. It's not one of the official books of the Torah. But Esther is, and it's the last one. So that's one of the things that's written. And that's one of the interesting things about the book of Esther. Okay, here we go. So it says, therefore, they call these days Purim. We did this yesterday, but we'll do it again. Al Shema Pur, because of the Pur. Pur means lots, we said before. Now, exactly what these lots look like, I don't know. I can't really figure it out. It wasn't just regular dice that they threw, because there had to be a possibility for the number one. And the dice, there's no number one. It starts with two. There's each die has 6 numbers on it. So the lowest number you can get is 2. So Haman, unless you ruled out number 1, could be didn't want, I don't know, thought number 1 was a bad month because that's the month of Nisan. That was the month when the Jews got out of Egypt, and so maybe he ruled out number 1 anyway. So let's say he threw dice, whatever it was. And that's the Pur. That's the Goral, that's the dice that he threw. And because it ended up that it came out exactly opposite what he wanted, this happened to be comes out to be a lucky month for the Jews. Adar, that's when Moses was born, it says. So therefore, it's called the Purim. Therefore, one minute, one second. Rakshniya. Okay, therefore these days are called Purim, and especially because of this letter. What's the letter? The Megillah. Let's have a look. Rashi says, therefore these days are called Nikvu. These days were set for all the generations. Which days are we talking about? The 14th and the 15th. On the 13th day, that's when the open cities they made their main victory. On the 13th, so they celebrate the day after their Purim. Regular Purim is the 14th day of Adar, 14th day, and the walled-in cities they celebrate their victory was the day after. Their victory was on the 14th, so they celebrate on the 15th. In other words, each one separates the day after their victory, the day when they were. So that's these days that Purim in cities that don't have walls around them. In Israel, it's celebrated on the 14th. Everybody outside of Israel celebrates on the 14th. And in Israel, on the 15th. Okay, and cities that have walls around it, they celebrate on the 15th. What they saw, that's what he says. What they saw up to now, what did they see? They saw all of these Mara'u, all these amazing things which occurred. What happened? What did they see? They saw Achashverosh, that all of a sudden they saw that how Achashverosh took out the vessels from the temple. And what happened? That all of a sudden the devil started dancing between them and he killed his own wife. And Haman all of a sudden decided to have jealousy for Mordechai. And what happened to him? That he got hung on, him and his sons got hung. And they also saw Mordechai, that he did not bow down. This is what Rashi says. He did not bow down, and he did not even bend his knee or bow down. And what they saw, how Esther, that she made the party for Haman, how she invited. Right, the whole thing. That's what let's go back to the Malbim. It says, why are the holidays called Purim? Because it shows that the Pur, these dice or whatever that Haman threw, came out exactly the opposite. and it was his lucky charm. He thought became our lucky charm because everything was against the Jews, and God changed from with divine intervention the whole entire thing around for the Jews. In other words, even when everything is against you, don't think it's going to turn out bad. Looks like everything is against. That's the whole idea of the miracle that occurred. Kimu v'kiblu, very good, Stephen, hello. Kimu, the Jews fulfilled, and they kiblu, and they accepted on them and on all of their seed, and anyone who went with them, and it won't be forgotten that these days are these 2 days, the 14th and the 15th, will be every single year. Every single year. Rashi says, what do they mean? The people that accompany them, the converts, or people that are going to convert. And it will be revealed. It says, it was written in their language. In other words, it was written in Hebrew. It became one of the parts of the Hebrew Torah. And that's what he says. The days will not be forgotten. It won't be similar to other decrees that the rabbis made, that they can sometimes only last for a certain amount of time and then they'll stop. But these 2 days, namely the open days of 14th and the days that are surrounded on the 15th, they make it for all generations. We're going to see some interesting things about this. It says that all of the holidays of Judaism are going to be like, not really noticeable, because there's going to be so much light of God in the future that the holidays, in Hebrew, they're called Yom Tov. Yom Tov means a day that's shining. It's a day that there's a little more godliness, the holidays. And it says that all the holidays will not be felt in the future, but Purim will. Purim will. And these days, Nizkarim v'Nasim will be remembered and done every generation, every family, every country, every seer, every city. The days of the Purim will not go away from the Jews, and their mention will not stop from their seed. In other words, it's going to be constant. And from this we learn, Rashi says, second, does he bring here? No. Okay, that's what it says in the Gemara, that all the other holidays are going to be not noticeable. This is will be negated, not noticeable. Of course, they'll always be noticeable. All the Torah is never going to change, but won't be noticeable. But because of the great light of godliness that's going to be, so we'll feel every day as a holiday. But Purim it's something totally above all the others, and really it goes with this here, with this what we said before. Let's just go back one. Kimu v'kiblu aYehudim. It says that the Jews, we talked about this yesterday, the Jews got the Torah, Mount Sinai. They got out of Egypt, received the Torah about 1,000 years before the holiday of Purim. Right? They received the Torah about 440 years after they received the Torah, 480 years, 500 years after they received the Torah, they built the first temple. Right? They built the first temple, and the first temple lasted for 410 years, and then there were 70 years in exile. So there's another little bit less, 500 years. So it's about 1,000 years after the Torah was given, was the holiday of Purim. So it says that all of that time, the Jews really never had what's called self-sacrifice. Anytime there was a little bit of pressure, or a little bit of difficulties, as the Jews got all confused and they worshipped idols and they did all sorts of terrible things. If you read the book of Judges, one after the other, there was like 15 judges. Each judge was the same story. The judge comes along, saves the Jewish people. The Jewish people are very happy. And then the judge dies after a while. They're called judges because they tell the people what to do. They're deciders, like leaders, something like kings, but not exactly the same thing. Gidon and Devorah was one. In any case, and then they died, and then the Jewish people just sort of lapsed back into being like influenced by all the non-Jews which were around them, and they worshiped these idols. And then all of a sudden, they couldn't figure out why. All the nations started attacking them. And they realized that maybe we got to get our act together, but there was no one to gather the Jews. And all of a sudden stands up a judge. And this judge stands up and he saves the Jewish people. And it goes over again. And the Jewish people all repent. And the judge dies. And they go back to doing sins. And then they have to have another judge. And over again. And that's how. So in other words, from the time the Torah was given, the Jews, all of the Jews, there was never one time where all of the Jews, when presented with a situation that demanded self-sacrifice, that they met the challenge. Never was, except for Purim. Purim was the first time they really got the whole point of the Torah. And that is, the point of the Torah is to serve God under all circumstances. Do the commandments, learn the Torah under all circumstances. So that's what happened in Purim that they did. They said, okay, we'd rather die than leave the Torah. So that is what means kimu. Kimu, the first time that they actually accepted the Torah. The Torah, kiyum, also means that it lasted. When the Jews, also even back then, when the Jews received the Torah at Mount Sinai, so they worshipped the golden calf, the first tablets got broken. So the Torah really didn't have any, it wasn't lasting, so to speak. The first tablets were broke, the first tablets that God gave. And then God gave us second tablets, and they got hidden when the temple was destroyed. But Purim, they actually fulfilled, they actually did the Torah under all circumstances. And also kibel means they accepted, means that they had self-sacrifice. That's it. First time in the 1,000 years since the Torah was given. Just one more thing. This is a saying that's used. The Lubavitch Rebbe used to use this in all sorts of situations. Means that whenever we talk about doing something good, that it should also be done. It's not good enough to just talk about it, but we also have to do it. If it's a thing that depends on God, like for instance to bring Mashiach, so we say Nizkarim. If we mention it, then Nasim, may it be done. May it actually be done physically. Nizkarim and Nasim means it was mentioned and done. So the holiday, B'tichtov Esther Malka, Esther the queen, Bat Avichail, and Mordechai Yehudi, they wrote all of the powerful message of this Megillah to do this Purim number 2. What's the number 2? Shenit. It says that the powerful miracle, Achashverosh and Haman and Mordechai and Esther, to write it all down. What does it mean, number 2? The year afterwards. After the miracle happened, so they sent this Magilat Esther all over. And then the year that came after that, they did it again. Chazav v'shalchos Purim, that you should make Purim. In other words, just to drive it home, that it should be done. It shouldn't be forgotten. And this is the Malbim. He writes, that's what he writes. He says that Esther wanted that the Megillah should be one of the books of the Torah. And there was an argument between the wise men if it should be done or not, because Esther, it meant that she was writing a book which would be additional to the Chronicles, the book of Chronicles. And the book of Chronicles, like I just told you in the beginning of the class, it ends with King Koresh, who was the king of Persia, who had conquered the Babylonians. And he all of a sudden liked the Jews. And he said the Jews can go back and they can build a temple. No problem. He even helped them. And that's the end. That's the end of the books that are written in the Torah. And Esther wanted to add on another book because this happened afterwards. Kamosh Amar, like the rabbi said, Magila Shalcha Esther, that the Megillah that was written, that was sent by Esther to the wise men, she said, Kava'uni Ladorot, please make this established for all generations. And this should be one of the books of the Bible. And they didn't want to in the beginning. Why? Because there was a whole argument, a complaint, Taluna, on the Kabbalah to make it permanent. Why make it permanent? She'ovrim al Bal Tosef. This is adding on another holiday that's not part of the Torah. You can't add on things. Add on another book that's not part of the books. So therefore, Esther had to join Mordechai and write another letter stressing the powerful miracle that happened, that this should be done. The second, she wrote another one, that the Megillah itself should be. Then she sent the Megillah as it is right now. That's what we just finished reading, and then they finally accepted it after they sent the second time. They accepted it. And by the way, every time they say a Megillah Hazot, you lift it up and you shake it. The Megillah, the one who's reading. Vayishlach Safarim al Kol Miuduyin al Sheva V'Esrim Me'omidina Malchus Achashverosh, that she sent letters to all of the Jews in all of the 120 countries that Achashverosh ruled, words of peace and truth. What does it mean? That as soon as the wise men decided, oh, we're going to do it, so instead of the book of the Megillah being in the subject of an argument, and she sent words that all of the wise men should have peace between them, and that the final decision to make the Megillah part of the books of the Torah was proper. Kasher Kiyam Aleim Mordechai Yehudi V'Esther Malka Kasher Kimu Al Nafsham V'Al Zaram Direit Somot V'Zakatam. That's how it's read. To do these days of Purim in their days, just like Mordechai, a Yehudi, and Esther a Malka said to do, and just the Jews accepted on themselves all of these fasts and prayers. What fast? What are we talking about? What type of fast? So he says like this: the fast that he's talking about, it says they brought, when they were arguing, the rabbis were arguing, should they make Esther part of the Torah or not, the book of Esther? And should we make Purim an official holiday or not? So it says that Esther brought Hevi Raya. They brought a proof. The four fasts. There's a book of Zechariah, the prophet Zechariah. He says that there's these four fasts that are going to be transformed into joy and feasting in the days of the Mashiach, when the temple is built. The Mashiach is going to build the temple, and then there's the four fasts, which these four fasts are dealing with the temple. I'll tell you what the fasts are in a minute. Shem Divrei Kabbalah, like it says, Som Revi'i, the fast of the fourth month. Som HaChamishi, the fast of the fifth month. Som Asiri, and the fast of the 10th month. Right? That they all should, Zechariah, Halo Gam Zeh Hi Osafa, this is a word of the Torah. And they accepted it, that it should be another fast. So the fast that they had, there's the fast of the 17th day of Tammuz, when the king of Babylon started getting close to the walls. And then there's the, Yud Zayin Tammuz. And then there's the fast of Tisha B'Av, of course, that's a fast of the, then there's the fast, what's called the fast of Gedalia. Gedalia was left behind. It was like the last hope in Israel that maybe there would be a return of the Jews. He was a righteous Jew and he was killed. And then there was Chaftalet Tevis, when that's also the beginning. That's when Nebuchadnezzar laid siege, and Yud Zayin Tammuz was when the walls were breached, and the 9th day of was when the temple was destroyed. So all these deal with the temple somehow or other. Okay, but all of these holidays were declared after after the temple was destroyed. So it says, just as these holidays were accepted, these four fasts were accepted. So also the Megillah should also be accepted. It's not considered to be adding onto the Torah. It's part of the Torah enjoining, and commanding the rabbis also to make a fence and to make laws also to strengthen Judaism. The word, so Umamar Esther Kiyam Divrei Purim Eilu v'nichta b'sefer. Therefore, it was written in a book. Esther requested. Now, the Rashi is just saying what the Malbim said before. Esther requested from the wise men that they should write this book with all of the other books of the Torah, and that's what it means v'nichta b'sefer. That it was actually accepted as one of the books of the Torah. Like the Malbim says, also the rabbis they agreed that it should be. Okay, one more chapter of Megillah Esther, and it only has 3 sentences in it. Ready? How do I get this here? Oh yeah, I have to look this. Okay, wait. 1 minute. Here we go. Good. No, made a mistake. Okay. Don't give up. Don't give up. Not allow the machines to conquer us. Here we go. I know what I was supposed to do. Okay. I was supposed to do something else. Okay. There we go. Excuse me. Yes. There we go. Okay. Vayasem Amelech Achashverosh mas ala oretz v'yayom. The king Achashverosh, he made a tax on the land and all of the islands of the ocean. What did he do that for? He said, it tells us how Mordechai succeeded in conducting the kingship, that he also, with the king, he conquered even more cities until the king, the new cities and the new countries, that he took taxes from them also. According to this, Achashverosh wasn't ruling the whole world, or maybe he was ruling and he didn't. That's what the Malbim says, that he helped to conquer even more cities. Could be even the cities willfully joined, the king. Okay, all of the power and the strength and the greatness of Mordechai, that the king made him great, is it not so that they are written al sifrei divrei yamim d'malchei mandai paras? This is also written in the history books of Greece and Persia. That's what it says. That maybe at that time they were. Maybe they still are. They'll find them. Ki Mordechai Yehudi Mishneh LaMelech Achashverosh v'Gadol HaYehudim v'Ratzu Ro v'Chov v'Doresh Tov Lamo v'Dover Shalom The calls are oh. That's the end of the Megillah. What does it mean? That it says Mordechai was pleasing to the majority of his brothers. What do you mean majority of what? Not everybody saved the whole Jewish people. So Rashi says the majority, not everybody. There were some people that didn't like him because he became close to the king, and therefore he stopped learning. So there's always going to be people that even if you save their lives, they're going to find something wrong with you. And that was the example of Mordechai. The Kol Zaro, that he added on his people, the Chasalta, he added greatness to all the Jewish people. And he says, right, Chasalta, Magilat Esther, that's the end of Megillas Esther. We learned the whole entire amazing story. Now, amazingly enough, we see, and the Rebbe points this out, that we see that it says that the Jewish people accepted the Torah, right? They all accepted the Torah, and by kimu v'kiblu, we said they accepted the Torah. So the Rebbe says, interestingly enough, that sentence, when did they accept the Torah? When they were under pressure, right? The Jews were under pressure. The Haman wanted to kill them, and they were under pressure, and that's when they fulfilled the Torah. So the Rebbe says, well, that's nice, that's a good idea, but that's not really the way it works out, because that sentence was written after Haman was already hung, and Esther already had things. The house of Haman was in her hands. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe points out that is the point, the purpose, the job, the unique ability of Mordechai, the leader of every Jewish people, is that the Jewish people should always accept the Torah. In the same way, when there's no troubles and there's no problem, there's no Haman, and everything is good, they should have the same devotion and self-sacrifice as they did when there was all these things. So it was when Haman was pressuring them and he was going to kill them. So all the Jews said, no, I am a Jew. I am willing to give my life for being a Jew. But all of a sudden, when Haman was killed, so you might think that the Jews would say, "Whoa, that was close. Let's just go back. Let's make a big party. Forget it. They made Purim, so we'll just make party all the time, and we're free of enemies." So it says, "Good. It's a good thing to make a party on Purim, but afterwards you have to have that same self-sacrifice as you did when you were under pressure." So the Rebbe said, how can you do it? The only time Jews have self-sacrifice is if there's some sort of pressure. There has to be pressure, but there's no pressure. They can't imagine that there's pressure. So the Rebbe said, no, what should pressure us and drive us crazy, even more crazy than Haman, is the fact that Mashiach is not here. The fact that there's one person in the world, even a non-Jew, that does not know about the oneness of God, that does not feel that God is creating him, that does not feel the truth of the Torah, 7 Noahide commandments. If there's one Jew that doesn't know about the Torah, even one non-Jew that is not aware of the oneness of God, it's a sign that the world is sick. Something's wrong. Right? Something is wrong. It's like a person saying that he's totally healthy and healthy. Just one toe has gangrene on it or something like that. Then the person is not healthy. Something's wrong. Should make him feel bad. So that's the whole idea of Purim now, and that's why it says that Purim is greater than Yom Kippurim. To the point, to the degree that Yom Kippurim is just Purim. It's something like Purim, but it's not. Okay, let's go and learn a little bit of this week's Torah portion. Stop the share. Stop the